Hello to all of our listeners out there in podcast land, and welcome to episode 6 of the Canadian Patriot podcast, recorded on November 30th, 2015. Joining me this evening, we have Tyler, the co-founder and co-host of the International Liberty or Death podcast. Tyler has been shooting for 9 years as both a casual and sport shooter and as a hunter. He identifies politically as a libertarian. Gavin, a business owner, gun enthusiast, hunter, atheist, and host of the Greater Toronto Area chapter of the Tactical Beard Owners Club. And as always, I'm your host, Andrew, an instructor, reviewer at everydaytactical.com, competitive shooter, and gun club director. And we'll start with Tyler. How are you this evening?
Pretty good. It's good to be back. Thanks for having me on.
I appreciate you being on the show as always. And Gavin is new to the panel. Gavin, actually, could you start, because you and I both hail from the same society of bearded professionals, could you tell everybody a little bit about TBOC?
I guess, yeah, it's an organization of bearded gentlemen of the tactical nature. So be it, military, police, or just like myself and many others, everyday citizens that have no military or police have that sort of tactical mindset where, you're just into guns and gear and just cool shit, and that the brotherhood is fantastic. I mean, I've traveled in the U across Canada and met some other guys in the club, and, they're always...
All right, sorry, Gavin. I'm actually going to turn off your video because when you talk, it cuts out. We'll see if that's better. Or maybe you can turn off your video if I didn't.
I still see him.
Yeah, I still see him too. More editing. There's a video button in the top center there. It says, yeah, just every time you talk. Can you do that again and I'll cut it back in?
Hello?
Hey, yeah, go ahead. If you want to just do that again, and I'll just cut your explanation of the club back in.
Yeah, it seems my internet's being a bitch, as well. But yeah, I guess the Tactical Beard Owners Club is just a group of bearded gentlemen with a tactical mindset, be it, military, police, or just everyday citizens like myself. I mean, the only prerequisite is that you have a beard and that you're tactical of some nature.
Right on. So that's how Gavin and I know each other, and then the next thing is we want to hear your feedback about the show, because I actually don't have very much for feedback this week. So you can get to feedback by going to CanadianPatriotPodcast.com/feedback or by emailing the show at feedback@CanadianPatriotPodcast.com. We're also available on Stitcher now for your on-demand radio listening. And with that, we'll go into the news. The first item that we're going to talk about is Alberta Bill 6. So this is the NDP government in Alberta wanting to change the way that family farms, all farms and ranches in Alberta operate. The actual legislation is only about 11, maybe 12 pages long. I think one of them is a title page, one of them is blank, and one's a signature page. So it's actually only a couple of hundred words when you read it, but they really want to change the way that farms and ranches operate in Alberta. The full name of the bill is the Enhanced Protection for Farm and Ranch Workers Act, and like any government bill, it seems to be the exact opposite of what it's talking about. I think the NDP government has a great idea here if this was applied to factory farms, but if you apply this to family farms and small farms and ranches, operations that only employ casual or seasonal workers, people that have family, children, neighbors that work with them, I think this makes it untenable to operate a farm in Alberta because you're making everyone subject to the Occupational Health and Safety Acts. Have you guys got first thoughts on this story?
It's just the NDP trying to expand the nanny state. They're assuming that Alberta farmers don't know how to run their own operations safely, and that they're legislative direction is needed to make things operate properly. And I don't really feel like it's entirely necessary. I think no one is in a position where they would care more about the safety of their children and family members than the family members themselves. I really don't think the government needs to be involved.
No, I agree. I think the people that would be most responsible for their children are the parents, but that's not the way that the leftist status wants to behave, right? That's completely counterintuitive to how the communists want to raise your children for you.
Yeah.
So a couple of things that are in the legislation, they want to change hours of work so that if you work more than 5 hours, you get a 30-minute break, which is a fine idea if you're an employee in an industrial or commercial setting. I think that's a grand idea. But if you're putting in crops because you're between rain, or if you're in the middle of calving season, you have cows that are being delivered, the cow's not going to wait 30 minutes because you're on your break, regardless of what that punch clock has to say.
Yeah, I mean, it's when you're dealing with nature and stuff like that, you're kind of at its mercy and not the clock. I mean,
Yeah, you got to do what you got to do to get the work done, because that calf's coming whether you're on your 30-minute break or not. Just because the government says you have to take a break doesn't mean the calf knows that.
Yeah. I mean, I think, we need to have rules in place to protect the workers, but I mean, yeah, is this even an issue? Like, I mean, are farm workers over there really being mistreated, or is this just a push for more government, right? Like,
I don't even think it's a push for more government. I think it's a push for more unions. QP would be the union. CUPE is the union that would benefit from this the most, because part of the legislation would allow farm workers to unionize, and then they'd become part of the CUPE union. So they'd fall under the Alberta Health and Safety Act, which means in addition to paying liability insurance that the farmer would need to have anyway because they're operating light industrial, they'd have to then have the occupational health and safety insurance on top of that. So they'd be taxing. It'd be a forced tax. They'd have to pay for the overhead for the occupational health and safety. They'd be subject to additional regulation and oversight by the provincial government. And on top of that, they'd have to deal with unions, which are things they currently don't do. And honestly, I think the cost of that would eliminate a lot of small farms. And large farms already follow this. Like a factory farm operation is already going to follow the standard employment practices, like a 40-hour work week, because they're an industrial farm and they have 100 people that work for them. So when your shift's over, and there's a new guy there.
And if they're that big already, if the people want to unionize, they can unionize. I mean,
yeah, the whole thing is it's not just an extra layer of government oversight, but it's a whole extra layer of essentially taxation.
Yeah, that doesn't sound good.
No, I don't think so. The good news, though, actually, just before the show, I actually saw a press release from someone, the Edmonton Herald, maybe. Someone had a story that actually said the NDP were not going to be discussing this bill today at legislature, so they're going to do more public consultations, which I think they actually should have done before they brought the bill to table. Typically you craft legislation and then you get feedback, and then you go and discuss it at Parliament. You don't discuss it at Parliament and then tell everybody in your all of your constituents, that's the word, all of your constituents that you've crafted this bill. Typically you do that the other way around.
That would be, thinking, though, and using logic.
Well, see, they always count on people being apathetic. They count on people being asleep and not paying attention, and that's how they slip this kind of thing through. And I think all the points that have been raised are correct in that it's really a tax grab, in a roundabout way, and it's a way to create a larger union force, and it's a way to create yet another government agency, because the enforcement aspect of this would be nightmarish. You'd need an entire new department just to handle it.
Yeah, absolutely.
What I think is really telling is the psychological effect that it would have on the next generation of Albertans if this law is passed and then stays around. Is it creates this mental prison where people grow up and things are a particular way, and government has regulations and laws in place, purportedly to achieve this end or that end. And the people that grow up under these laws, that's the norm to them. And they begin to develop a mindset where they think that without this law in place, then it would just be chaos and hell, and all these brutal, oppressive employers would just take advantage of them. And so it creates a generation of people that are afraid of living without that regulation, without that umbrella of government protection. So all these laws that regulate and control, they create the need for more government psychologically, in my opinion.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
That's a valid criticism.
Yeah. Even without the tax grab, just the union alone, I mean, that's devastating to small industries sometimes. Like, I mean, the big guys, that maybe have 12 different mega farms across the country or the world or whatever, sure, if one of their plants is shut down, they can survive. But if you're part of that union and you're a small farm, you're going to be screwed if you're shut down for 2-3 weeks, I mean, or longer.
It'll kill you.
And then if you cross the picket line, you're bad and everybody hates you, and I mean,
Could you imagine that, crossing a picket line that's essentially at your residence, because these farmers, it's a small farm, they live there, that's their home.
Yeah.
Like, just the absolute absurdity of crossing a picket line at your own house.
Well, exactly. I mean, and your boss would probably be your mother or father, and they're not part of the union because they're management.
Yeah, they'd be considered management because they're an owner.
So technically, you have to hate them. Like, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And think about this too. On the podcast that I do, we talk about people abusing the state apparatus, to their own end. And just think about the hell that would be created if you have a family that's going through divorce, and for the husband to screw with the wife or the other way around, they can just go and complain to these commissions and say that they're making the children work 7-8 hours without a break type of thing, and just loose the state's thugs on them just for the hell of it. And it would be months of investigations, and it would cost all kinds of money. And just think about the damage that can be done.
Yeah, that would be. I could totally see somebody abusing that, because the whole system is rife for abuse.
Yeah, even like rebellious teenagers, they want to cause shit for their parents. They'll just call that little hotline and say that they have to work too hard.
Well, not even that. I had to pick eggs out of the chicken coop for 2 hours and 6 minutes, and the provincial statute says it has to be 2 hours maximum.
Yeah, or my job description.
And I'm pulling that directly out of the bill. Like, that's in the legislation. Like, there are so many opportunities to abuse this, it's not even funny.
Mm-hmm.
Well, not even that. Like, currently, one of the companies that I deal with, they're on a big strike, and they're unionized. They're part of the big auto workers union. And, I mean, if they're not allowed to bring people in to do work now, even though they're not actually manufacturing cars or anything car-related, but their workers are auto workers union, so if they're on strike, everyone's on strike. And when they want to bring in part-time labor to pick parts in the warehouse, they have to go to that who's been laid off, longest list and offer that guy a job, regardless of what his job was. So if he was an enameler in the automotive plant, they've got to bring him in first, or at least offer him the job first, before they can go down the line. And if he wants it, he gets it, even though he's not qualified and probably doesn't want to pick parts in a warehouse and put them in a box. Like, it's nuts.
Yeah.
I'm pretty encouraged, though, by how the NDP has kind of backed down, even though they have, a mandate. They've got the mandate from the people to just pass whatever legislation they want, where they have kind of taken a step back and opened things back up to, okay, maybe we need to look at this thing because people are up in arms. I think there were 1,800 people that were willing to kind of register themselves at a rally in front of the Alberta legislature today. And I think the largest demonstration there ever was 2,000 people. So, and this hasn't even gained steam yet. And those are the people that were willing to kind of register themselves at the rally. There were certainly more people than that there.
For sure. So
that's always encouraging, because I never thought I'd live to see the day where Canadians actually, cared about anything. So that's one small step, I guess.
It's a positive sign, but this is what the people of Alberta voted for, and this is now what the people of Alberta are going to have to fight.
I was actually in Alberta on election night when that unfolded. It wasn't pretty. No, there's no story or anything. I was just there. I was driving across the country with my girlfriend from Vancouver back home to Ontario, and we stopped in at a friend's place in Calgary on election day. And he's like diehard, libertarian, anarchist type type mindset. So, he obviously is very unhappy with the election result, but they just put his feet up on the table and cracked a beer. He's like, oh boy, here we go.
Hold on,
But the Wild Rose are poised to take it now in the next election. Just more bills like this come down the pipe, which they inevitably will. It's just going to hand the next election to a party like the Wild Rose, which in the long run will be good for Alberta.
I hope so. I mean, I don't necessarily think that one party is any better or any more trustworthy than another, but
that's a fair point.
Well, I think if I were an Albertan and I got to choose, I'd choose the party that didn't want to put me out of business.
Yeah.
So let's move into the Syrian refugee coordinator in Montreal to make $1,800 a day to welcome newcomers to Canada. From MSN.com. There will of course be a link in the show notes. I think his name is Michel Dorin. He seems very French to me.
Yep.
And he actually worked with the current Montreal mayor, Denis Coudray, when he was immigration minister. So now Mr. Dorans is going to be heading up, I guess, the welcoming committee for Syrian refugees in the city of Montreal, which is a 3-month posting and has a salary of $110,000, which works out to $1,800 a day that they're paying this fella for 3 months worth of work. So that's.
Well, I mean, that includes his vacation time too, apparently, and
that's
not
right.
being in the pension plan.
He's not in the pension plan, and he's not taking paid vacation while he's working a 3-month contract. So
Yeah, particular job. He's probably got a pension plan from some other posting, though.
Yeah, the last job that he worked, that they paid him $100,000 for 3 months worth of work. I mean, like, this dude's making $350,000 a year if he can get consistent work, and maybe he only works for 3 months out of the year. Because I mean, if I could get $100,000 for work in 3 months, I know I would.
Yeah, I'd hunt the other 9 months.
Yeah.
Like, I tell you, when I read a headline like that, I wonder if Montreal isn't located somewhere in Ontario, because this kind of pay, it just reminds me of like the e-health type scandals and all the overpaid consultants that Ontario has found on its in its books. People being paid.
Montreal.
What is this guy actually doing?
Well, and that's what I can't figure out, is this was done as a closed-door meeting, and there's very little to no documentation about what's actually in his contract. I haven't been able to find anything about what his job is. I haven't been able to figure out exactly what he's going to be doing day to day, but I've been able to figure out, because they had to disclose it, how much money they're paying him.
Yeah.
That sounds like. I mean, Montreal doesn't have a great track record when it comes to corruption and politics. I mean,
none of them do. No place does. The only places that have a good track record with corruption and stuff are the places where they hang people who are found to be corrupt.
Yeah, but I mean, that they're still paying off like the building of the stadium from the Olympics and stuff that.
Montreal, huge money hauls, big time corruption.
Yeah.
You know, when I was younger, the expression always was corrupt as a Quebec construction worker. But that place is known for corruption. But I mean, it's true everywhere. They're just not as good at hiding it. But I saw this headline, and I said to my girlfriend, I said, you see, this is what happens. That party gets into power, like any party, like, let's get real here. But the party gets into power, and it's just a way of channeling money to their cronies.
That's this on the surface, and maybe that's not really. Maybe this guy is really his experience as the immigration minister under Coudray. Maybe this guy is the most experienced person on the face of the planet to welcome in refugees to this country.
But is that what he does? Is he at the airport?
It looks like cronyism, and it smells like cronyism, and I'm sure if I went to Montreal, it would taste like cronyism.
Yeah.
But at least on the surface, he has some qualifications.
Well, I would like to open that up. What exactly were his duties as Deputy Minister of Immigration and Citizenship? Like what exactly does that entail? How do we know that's nothing more than a ceremonial position that comes with a $20K pay bump?
Yeah, but that's better than just nephew of or something like that. I mean,
yeah, at least he's not somebody's cousin. But I mean, so when he was the Deputy Minister for Immigration, there was the Kosovo refugee thing. It wasn't a crisis then. It was just the Kosovo refugees coming here from another war-torn country. And he did have a hand in that, but I don't know, like, what does a Deputy Minister of Immigration do. Like, they review laws, and he's not processing case files. He's going to press events. Maybe he's giving speeches. Like, I don't see what this guy's role is.
That's probably the sum total of it.
Minister of Immigration, I guess. I mean,
yeah, like, he's not even allowed to make decisions. He's the deputy.
yeah.
Like, I mean, he probably gets a voice at the table, but I don't see that what this guy does, and I cannot believe. No, I take that back. I'd like to not believe, but I'm fully willing to accept that someone has decided to give this man $100,000 for 3 months worth of work, and it was retroactive to a date from before he actually started doing the work, because they actually started paying him retro to November 19th.
I guarantee you, in the future, a new scandal will come to light where this guy is found to be expensing his Timbits and Chicken McNuggets. You watch for it.
Probably.
The taxpayer will be paying for it.
Are we making a comment about how rotund this particular gentleman is?
No, we're making a comment about how the guy makes so much money and yet he still can't pay for his own coffee and donuts.
I would have preferred if we were making a fat joke, but okay.
Well, let's go. Sure, do that too. But you know, Tim Hudak, former leader of the Ontario PCs, he racked up, I think, $10,000 of McDonald's expenses during his tenure as PC leader.
That's a lot of McDonald's.
How many McNuggets do you buy for $10,000? That's a lot. That's like a pickup truck full of McNuggets.
Yeah, that's like 20,000 McNuggets.
Yeah, that's a lot of McNuggets. All right, so we basically have nothing good to say about this guy, and he's getting paid way too much money for a job that basically any bureaucrat should already be able to do.
Yeah.
But do you think because now we've slowed down the pace of immigration that they're going to extend that position and give him something like $220,000 over 6 months?
I guarantee something like that's going to happen, because why Montreal needs their own guy to welcome Syrian refugees, don't know, blows my mind. No idea why a city needs a refugee coordinator. They already have these people in government that do that with the current refugees.
Yeah.
And, I mean, okay, so we're going to more than double the number of refugees that they want to take in, or they're not bringing in anyone who's not Syrian, because they bring in, call it 20,000 a year on a good year, and now they want to bring in 25,000 a year from Syria, so they're either not bringing anybody else in, or they're more than doubling the total number. But they already have these groups and people in major centers where they resettle refugees. So I don't know what this guy's doing, greasing the wheels where they're already working.
Doesn't Montreal? Go ahead.
No, there's the post going around about the organization in Halifax that sort of helps with immigration and all of that and settling people, and it was actually called ISIS.
Yes, the immigration. Oh, what was their name? I actually looked this up the other day.
No, I saw the photo, but
yeah.
I was on the
Doesn't
floor
Montreal already have a rather large Arabic-speaking community where they could have had some prominent, respected community member act as the welcoming committee for these people?
Or just
why do we need to parachute some asshole in and pay him $110,000 for doing nothing?
Yeah,
I don't get it.
No, it boggles my mind. The whole thing boggles my mind. But anyway, link to that one in the show notes too. On to other things that boggle my mind. We'll jump into the main topic. Actually, before we jump into the main topic, I see Tyler's drinking too. Tyler, what are you drinking?
Rickards White.
Solid choice.
Fresh from the bosom of Quebec. I was there last week.
So it was the less expensive. It was the French version.
Moderately less expensive, yeah.
Moderately less expensive.
Wouldn't that be a Rickards Blanc then, though?
No, I was actually disappointed. I made a beeline to the beer section, and I saw that it was Rickards White and not Rickards Blanc, and I was like, what the hell? But,
they get out of this...
I don't know if you can see it, but even English is first on the label.
Is it at least half the size?
It is not Bill 101 compliant.
Oh, somebody's going to get fined.
Yeah, oh well. But actually, I was there. I had a nice time. I ducked in to say hello to Sean Bevins last Monday, and we had a nice chat. And when I was there, we have some exciting news that I don't want to break it. I'll let Sean break it next time he comes on the podcast. But there's some exciting stuff coming up in the future.
Right on. Sean,
on the Liberty front, the patriotism front.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking forward to having Sean on a future episode to discuss that at length.
Hmm.
'Cause I'm already in on it, but we'll let the listeners in on it really soon. The main topic of the show this evening, I want to actually look at the people that Mr. Trudeau has appointed to his cabinet positions and the marching orders that he's given them in their ministerial mandate letters. So the way that it works in Canada, when you get elected to Parliament, if you're in the majority party, you can be selected to be in cabinet, which is essentially an advisory role to the Prime Minister. And then the Prime Minister gives you what amounts to marching orders, which are the ministerial mandate letters that tell you what your job is for the next 4 years. So we've picked a couple of those to go through, and we're actually going to start with probably my favorite Liberal candidate, the National Defense Minister, Harjit Singh Sajjan, who hails from Vancouver, South in British Columbia. So Mr. Sajjan is a former Vancouver Police Department gang crime unit detective, and also a lieutenant colonel reservist with the Canadian Armed Forces deployments in Bosnia and Afghanistan as an intelligence officer. So he came to Canada when he was 5 years old. You guys have no doubt seen him in the news. He is the suave-looking gentleman with the beard and the funny hat.
Yep.
Which I think is actually really funny, and a lot of the media that's covering it is calling him a Sikh warrior, which I think is really funny because I don't remember them ever calling anybody else in the CAF a warrior.
Yeah.
So a little bit of the Liberal double standard there. But he does seem like a good guy. He is a veteran. He is a former police officer. I'm not really sure why he ran to be a Liberal.
Probably because he knew he could win.
Well,
I know that there are a couple guys, I was reading their bios on the cabinet, and they've crossed the floor in the past. And a lot of these people, they're career politicians, and their convictions sway with popular opinion, and they'll just say whatever they need to say to get elected. And we know that a lot of these guys, they get elected, and they're just puppets. So, I mean, what difference does it make?
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of Mr. Sajjan, his mandate letter includes ending the combat mission in Iraq and Syria, so I guess that means all 6 of our jets need to come home, because that's the extent of our combat mission in those countries. He's to maintain the national defense spending level, which I think on its face is actually a good thing, because the last time that we had a Liberal majority, they cut spending to the armed forces, and I'm actually not entirely disheartened if they're going to leave it alone. So that means our troops might actually get the gear and equipment they need to do their jobs. Something that does scare me on that front, though, is the open and transparent competition to replace the CF-18. We're already in line to buy the new Joint Strike Fighter that the Americans are producing. Personal opinion, it's a piece of crap and it shouldn't be flown in Canada, but that's my opinion. I'm not a pilot. I'm not an avionics engineer. I don't do that for a living. It's just my opinion that it's not the right jet for what we do, but it is a multi-role defense fighter, so I mean, I guess theoretically it should work. I don't think we should be spending as much as we are on it, but I'm interested to see what they end up doing in terms of a competition to replace the CF-18 now.
I mean, I found that interesting, but I want to just, I'm sure everybody's well aware here, but here's a brief history lesson for some of the listeners if they're unaware. Way back when the Chrétien Liberals first got elected, we were in line to purchase new helicopters to replace our aging fleet of Sea Kings. And the Liberals promptly canceled that plan, and now, more than 20 years later, we are still flying the Sea Kings. So this worries me in the sense that the incoming Liberal Party, they're going to cancel the plan to replace the F-18, and now a plan to replace this aircraft is going to flounder for the next decade and a half, and these aircraft are going to fall out of the sky and kill our flying men and women.
No, that's a valid concern, and I mean I think that's part of the reason why the CF-18s were slated to be retired in the first place. This is a 50-year-old airframe that it's been upgraded several times. It has new avionics and weapons packages, but at its heart, it's still a 50-year-old airframe. It's due for retirement.
Yep.
then, I mean, if we're far enough down the road of getting a replacement anyways, backing out at this point is going to cost us money and not give us anything to show for it.
Just like it did with the helicopters.
Absolutely, and that's the thing. The money has already been given to the Americans for the
Well,
development of the Joint Strike Fighter. The money is spent. We just haven't received a product.
yeah. So, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, that's a done deal. We may as well get what we've paid for better or worse. At least it's newer than what we've got. I mean, and that's not wasting money.
No, I agree wholeheartedly with that.
Now, I do agree with the Liberals' criticism of the process and that it wasn't overly transparent, and the cost is way beyond what we initially committed to, and it might not necessarily be the right craft for this country. I do agree with the criticism there, but I agree with what you two just said in that we've already spent the money. It's going to be more costly to pull out than it is to commit to the project now.
Yeah, I agree.
Yes.
They should have been criticizing this before the contract was signed to go into development with the Americans. I don't think, and I haven't thought from the beginning that this is the right aircraft for Canada. But like I say, I don't design aircraft. I don't fly aircraft professionally. I just don't think it makes sense based on its technical data package to meet the criteria that were laid out in the original competition. But that's what we get, so that's what we get.
Good enough for America. It's got to be good enough for us, right?
As long as it doesn't freeze up and fall out of the sky in the winter.
Yeah.
Something that actually comes up in a lot of the ministerial mandate letters is my next point for Mr. Sajan. Work with senior leaders of the fill-in-the-blank to establish and maintain a workplace free from harassment and discrimination. The blank can include the federal government, the provincial government, the RCMP, or in this case, the Canadian Armed Forces. So I guess that means everybody gets a sharp presentation every week now in the forces. Remember, don't touch. That's no means no. Red light, that means stop. Green light means it's okay to, like, I can't stand those kind of safety briefs.
You know what this means? They're giving the minister the authority to hire somebody for $100,000 plus full dental to show PowerPoint presentations once a week to various groups of people.
And that's exactly what it's going to be, and that's exactly what I was just saying. That is the content of those PowerPoint slides. I've had to sit through them. The Canadian Forces already has a harassment discrimination policy. It's already part of the Queen's regulations and orders. To tell the minister to enforce a rule that's already there is like making a law to say don't commit murder. There's already a thing that's there for that.
Yep.
But that's a number of ministers have very similar language that says, you know, eliminate your blank workspace from harassment and discrimination. So, I mean, it's part of the mentality of that party, I suppose, to make everyone feel included and not discriminated or harassed against.
There are entire think tanks that exist solely to think of new ways of pushing this message onto people. And I always say, without these wasteful government programs, how would the government buy support from otherwise unemployable people?
Sort of like CUPE in Alberta, just saying. The last point that I wanted to discuss, and this is not nearly all of the points in the National Defense Mandate letter, but these were just some of the ones that I thought were particularly interesting to discuss. The last one I want to talk about is actually another one that I think is beneficial, is increasing the size of the Canadian Rangers. So for the listeners that don't know, the Canadian Rangers are the Northwest Territories reservists. They're primarily natives. They work for the Canadian Forces in a reserve capacity and are essentially there to promote Arctic sovereignty. They're not exactly deployable. They don't work full time. They mostly shoot old 303 Enfields at polar bears. They are very capable soldiers. I've shot and trained with a number of Rangers. They're very, generally speaking, they're very dedicated to their job, but their job as a Ranger is a very small part of their life. They're essentially like a reservist, like you'd see anywhere else in Canada, but they operate in the high Arctic.
They did just get new rifles, though. Or it's in the process.
They've started the procurement process for new rifles to be built in Kitchener by Demaco under license from SACO. They have not yet replaced the 303 Enfields that they've been using for the last 90 years.
No. But it's on the way. And if I could get my hands on one of those, because they look really nice, I would
They are super nice rifles. But, I mean, it's a SACO rifle. It looks like a $4,000 rifle because it is.
Yeah.
Actually, I thought that there were 10 rifles that were originally produced by Steyr to compete for the replacement rifle. These were the prototypes that were submitted to the competition, and they were actually sold on the Canadian market.
Oh, that's fantastic. So we might be able to get some of these rifles. That would be very cool.
Not the one that the armed forces chose, but one of the contenders.
But that would be a unique piece of history.
I'm still very cool with owning something like that. I'm surprised that went out to public tender, like that somebody could go buy one of those. That's very cool.
I mean, it's just a bolt-action rifle, right? But
well, yeah, but I mean, an FNFAL is just a semi-automatic 308.
Yeah, I'll try to tell the government that.
Yeah, wow.
Look at Obama. He's selling those 1911s now.
Oh, and to be part of the civilian marksmanship program in the States and get a World War II issued piece of history like that would be super cool. But
yeah. But I mean, he's the biggest gun grabber around, it seems, and now he's like, oh yeah, everyone 1911s, here you go.
Wow. I think somebody pointed out that it was a source of tax revenue.
Yeah, at the end of the day, when they're hard up, then they'll start changing policies to make more money. I'm not going to say that I'd like things to get to the point in this country where they start looking at that here, but I'd like them to look at that without the economy being on the verge of collapse. Obviously, I'd love to own, an issue Browning high power. Not that I want the gun, but just because I want that, piece of Canadiana, I guess, if you'd like to call it that.
Yeah, absolutely. I would. Yeah, any of the service weapons that I was issued, if I could get something that was even in the same serial range, would be just a cool thing to have.
Yeah.
Increasing the size of the Rangers, though, thoughts about that? Good, bad, otherwise?
I tell you, I support it. I like the idea. I think it helps bring far-flung communities who obviously have a different identity than the majority of Canada. It helps kind of create a country out of us all. They're doing some service, and it kind of brings us all together, and I like the idea of that. But the other thing is, beyond increasing the size of the Ranger Force, I'd like to see their capabilities broadened. I'd like to see them being trained with heavier weapons to make them actually like a force to be reckoned with. Like, say, if Putin wants to fly a couple, Su-24s over the pole, then they could conceivably be shot down by these guys and not make it to Toronto or Hamilton before any amount of force could be brought to bear.
I'd be super cool with that. I mean, having worked with Rangers, like I said, they are dedicated soldiers. I mean, they are everyday Canadians. They do work in a unique climate and a unique environment, but I mean, they're very competent soldiers. I don't see why it would be any different than issuing them an Enfield. I mean, store it in an armory and give them an AA gun.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I mean, especially with somebody like Putin around. I mean, that guy is nuts. And especially
I was just using him as an example because
he is nuts, though, and he's
conceivably the only guy who would attack over the pole. I don't know who else would do that.
Especially since our new PM told him, to bring it.
I tell you personally, I think Canada should be cozying up to the Russians to create some kind of like global energy superpower, but I don't think that's going to happen.
Kind of have like a Cuban Missile Crisis again, but it's the like known as what, Missile Crisis or something.
Yeah.
All right, let's go on to the next one. This will be the Small Business and Tourism Minister, and this is from my neck of the woods. And the three people that are listening that I'm going to offend, I apologize in advance. I think you say her name Bardish Chagger. If I'm wrong, call it in and tell me how to say it. I'm going to call her Chagger. She's the Waterloo, Ontario MP, which is one riding to my north. And she is actually a brand new MP. As far as I can tell, this is her first time being in Parliament, which could be a good thing or a bad thing. I haven't decided yet. She is a first-generation Canadian, which, again, I think is a good thing. There's nothing wrong with having first-generation Canadians as MPs. Her political experience is the executive assistant to a previous Kitchener-Waterloo MP for 4 years. And in 2004, she graduated from University of Waterloo with a bachelor degree in science. So it stands to reason she's a smart young woman with some political experience, but she is a new MP. Have you guys heard anything good, bad, or otherwise about Miss Chagger?
Um, sorry, what riding was she in?
Waterloo.
She's just water. Okay, because I think she replaced Peter Braid, and that was my old riding actually when I lived in Waterloo.
Oh,
But I haven't heard
right on.
anything about her. But I'm interested to see what she'll do with the area. It's nice that she went to the University of Waterloo, and then is subsequently actually representing an area where she understands the concerns of the constituents and some of the issues that affect the community. So that's always good. It really gets me when people get parachuted in.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I
And I
like
don't
that.
think she's one of those people that's been parachuted. She's the child of immigrants that moved to the Waterloo area. She's gone to school in Waterloo. She's gone to the University of Waterloo for her post-secondary. So she's lived here her whole life,
Hmm.
or lived there. I say here because Waterloo is, I think, 5 minutes if I drive slow. Um, I don't know. I'm a little concerned about having a rookie MP in a cabinet position. I would think you would want your more seasoned politicians in that role, but at the same time, it is nice to see new faces and new ideas in that role, and we don't have another like Stéphane Dion, who we'll get to later, who's been in government
I'm
for
assuming
forever.
because she went to Waterloo that she went to school for business, though.
No, she actually has a bachelor's in science, of all things.
Yeah, University of Waterloo isn't a huge. It doesn't have a huge business program. It has the largest co-op program, but it's mostly engineering.
Yeah, see, that's the thing that I find a little weird. Like, wouldn't you find? I mean, there's no shortage of people that went to school for business in Waterloo. You think, they would have found somebody that has a background in small business to be the minister of small business,
Yeah,
or at least
I
maybe
would.
travel and tourism.
Yeah, I can see what you're getting at, Gavin, and I don't disagree with you, but it is nice to see that she doesn't have a degree in basket weaving.
True.
That is
So
true. I would just want to point out that it's a two-sided coin when you say you have your apprehensions about her being a rookie MP, because the cynic could always say, well, that just means she's less experienced at fleecing the citizen.
well, and that's what I mean, Tyler. I mean, it could be good. It's new blood. She doesn't know how to pull the wool over everyone else's eyes yet because she
Yeah.
hasn't been there long enough. But at
Yeah.
the same time, she might not have experience that I don't know you might want in a cabinet level position.
Yeah. But again,
I don't
this
know.
boils down to, like, what do these people actually do?
Hmm.
Like,
Well,
we all know Trudeau's narrative where he was saying that small businesses are just ways for rich people to dodge taxes. So when I read this directive, that she is to ensure that the small business tax rate reduction is implemented to ensure that it is used to support small businesses. That that language kind of strikes me in such a way that they might reduce a particular tax, but other fees and other regulatory hurdles will be jacked up so that they can then create a kind of like corporate welfare system to make businesses dependent on government.
well, I mean,
Those are my concerns.
the large businesses are already dependent on government. You get tax breaks for moving to a certain municipality.
Hmm.
You get tax breaks for hiring the right number of the right kind of people. But as a small business, as a sole proprietorship, or somebody with a few casuals or a few full-time employees, like a legitimate, real small business, not what Trudeau was talking about with small business being tax shelters for the rich, which is such a childish statement. I don't even want to talk about that
I don't know
part
how he
'cause
got
it's
elected after saying something like that.
Well,
uh,
as a small business owner, I didn't vote for him.
and as a small business owner, I didn't vote for him.
I didn't vote for him either.
The man said it, and it's a childish remark. But hopefully, at least the mandate letter makes sense that the small business tax rate reduction is implemented to ensure it's used to support small businesses, rather than to reduce the personal income tax obligations of high-income earners, which on its face I think is a solid statement. Because I mean, that's really what the point of the small business is you should be able to feed a family, you should be able to produce a product, you should be able to support your community. You shouldn't be someone who has a six-figure-a-year job, who's a consultant that's been working for the same company for 20 years. Right?
And
Like
get
that's
paid $110,000 for 3 months of work.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, I wonder if he. I actually wonder if that's being paid directly to Mr. Dora, or if he has a business for that. Maybe
You know,
the.
that's interesting because it's a total do as I say, not as I don't, or not as I do type of thing, where they want to clamp down on small businesses being used to basically siphon money off to your family members and stuff, and basically pay them to do nothing, create expenses. But in the meantime, what does the government do? They funnel money to their friends all day long. They funnel money to their preferred companies all day. That's what they do.
Yeah, I mean, I find that, the not-for-profits are the worst, more so than small business. I mean, all they do is just pay their execs with all the profits. So there is no profit because everyone got paid out everything. And then, we're a not-for-profit, so we get tax breaks and this, that, and everything else.
Yeah. And we have a board of directors, and everybody gets paid a six-figure because they sit on the board. Yeah.
I mean, I see the checks that I write, monthly to the different governments and this and that we have an entity in, and I mean, we're certainly not not getting taxed. I mean,
it's crazy. So the two other points in her mandate letter: reducing the administrative burden on small businesses, which again, on its face, sounds like a fantastic thing. I cannot stand the number of forms the government makes me fill out. So hopefully that actually means exactly what it sounds like. And making it easier for small and medium enterprises to take advantage of government financing and that doesn't make sense. Make it easier for small, medium enterprises to take advantage of government financing and export-oriented supports. So I think that they're targeting small businesses that make stuff to sell it outside of the country. I'm a little dismayed by the fact that they want to take advantage of government financing, but I guess if it's there, the government should be helping small businesses to take advantage of it. I just would prefer it didn't exist, full stop, though.
Exactly.
yeah.
Like, I find it kind of ironic that there's a government department that will exist, and their sole function is to lessen government's role in business. Like, if your goal is to lessen government's role in business, then you should be slashing departments, not creating new ones.
Yeah, I don't know. If there's government financing, if there's government financing, of course. Oh, I'm just gonna move on to the next one before I go into a rage because I can't stand the language in that.
Yeah.
The oxymorons, they infuriate me. Oh, that's a good idea. More beer. Do I have more beer? Good.
What are you drinking? What is that?
My first beer is a Granville Island Lions Winter Ale, which tastes of cocoa and vanilla and is delicious.
I've been to that brewery. It's awesome.
Is it as small of a brewery as I think it is?
Oh, it's tiny. Yeah.
Yeah. Because it tastes like a tiny brewery. It's
And
really good. A lot of
fun
beer.
fact, Granville Island is not an island.
I feel misled. I want to give this beer back.
It's a peninsula.
It's a peninsula. All right, on to beer number 2, Stonehammer Brewing in Guelph, Ontario. The next person that we're going to talk about is somebody that's been a Liberal MP longer than I've been alive. Ralph Goodall, Regina, Wascana, Saskatchewan, and he's going to be the Minister of Public Safety and Emergency Preparedness. Now, I believe our old Minister of Public Safety and Emergency Preparedness was Stephen Blaney, right?
Yep.
And he was a fellow I could get behind because he listened to his constituents and went so far as to get his PAL and listened to what firearms owners had to say. And Mr. Goodall's been in politics since 1970s. Under Kretchen, he was the Agriculture Minister and the Minister of Natural Resources and Public Works, and under Paul Martin, he was the Finance Minister. So this is the exact opposite of Miss Chagger. This is an old white guy who's been in politics for like 40-odd years and has 3 sets of previous experience as a minister.
Yeah, this guy's also the guy that served under Pierre Trudeau as well.
Oh, is this the Trudeau guy?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, so that's one of his qualifications, apparently, is that he worked with Justin's dad.
The time frame would make sense. I totally left it out of the bio when I looked it up about... I only went back the last 2 prime ministers on anybody to see if they'd been in the last, 4 cabinets. 2 under Harper and then the 2 prior to that, because I didn't want to go back through before Kretchen started. So that's actually really exciting. This guy also worked with Trudeau Sr.
Yeah.
So
when Trudeau posted all the ministers, he put up these little photos with their name and then bullet points. So the three that I haven't named Parliamentarian of the Year by his peers, for both Pierre and Justin Trudeau. Those are the only qualifications they list for public safety and emergency preparedness.
Amazing. That's a frightening concept. This guy is.
I did a little background, and he was a Boy Scout.
Okay,
he was a Boy Scout.
He might remember that he should be prepared, so maybe that's a qualification.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Odin save us.
I think we're damn lucky we dodged a bullet that we didn't end up with Mark Holland.
Yes, absolutely, because I was concerned that Mark was going to make a comeback, and we were going to have to go through the Turf Mark Holland campaign again.
Yeah. Who were the other guys we didn't want? Bill Blair.
Oh, God.
Dodged a big bullet there. He would have been terrible.
Yeah.
I hear that Ralph is somewhat of a sportsman and sympathetic to the gun owner's plight, but under the Liberal banner, you won't be able to expect many favors from him.
Any favors, I don't think.
If you look at kind of the direction he's received from Trudeau, the Liberal Party policy on guns, if you read their kind of like their party platform on their website, it included saying that they were going to repeal C-42. But now the rhetoric has changed to now they're only going to repeal certain parts of C-42. So I find that interesting.
Let's jump into that one first, because I stuck it in the middle, because I don't want this to be the gun show, because the gun show is what I do after the gym. So the first point that we'll go to is take action to get handguns and assault weapons off our streets by working with Minister of Justice to strengthen controls on handguns and assault weapons, including by repealing some elements of Bill C-42, which is possibly the longest run-on sentence I've read today. But what assault weapons? Seriously, what assault weapons? An assault...
I mean like that one.
The abuse of language by the left, not even liberals, just the abuse of language by the left, and the right for that matter, the abuse of language by politicians. The way that they twist English phrases to sound like something they're not drives me bonkers. And this is one of those things, assault weapons. There's no such thing as an assault weapon. And even if there was, they're not on our street. When was the last time any crimes were committed in Canada with a long arm? Not even semi-auto, just a long arm. Hardly ever. Almost all gun crime in Canada is illegally owned handguns, barring suicide and domestic violence, which is a whole separate issue. That's not on our streets, that's in our homes.
Yeah.
So let's start by separating out what we're talking about.
Yeah. These people are offering solutions to problems that don't exist. They're trying to create for themselves.
100%, Tyler. The assault weapons is not a thing. If we really want to look at it, and we should probably just do a whole show on the topic so I can get it out of my system, there's an assault rifle, which is a thing, because it's a poor German translation.
But that's what AR stands for, right?
I will beat you. The whole assault rifles, handguns on our street, there are a small number of criminals in our country that illegally own and carry handguns. I don't think anyone in their right mind will argue that. But when was the last time you saw a gangbanger strapped with an AR-15 holding up the 7-Eleven? It doesn't happen. Never mind the fact that an AR-15 is not an assault weapon, it's a semi-automatic rifle. That's what they're trying to paint this at, is things that look like machine guns.
Yeah, it's almost always some shitty, High Point or something that got smuggled in from Detroit. And if you look at this language, when they say strengthen controls on handguns and assault weapons, and then they specifically reference C-42, what do you think that means? It means they're going to get rid of the automatic ATTs.
Which doesn't do anything anyway, because with an ATT, I can take my gun to a place where I can legally take my gun. A gunsmith, a store, a range. I can't drive around with it in my truck. I can't carry it on my hip. I can't take it to my buddy's house. Honestly, you can't even take it to most border crossings because there's not the right language on the permit. By having it automatically granted by virtue of having a license doesn't change where I can legally take a restricted firearm in this country. Mm-hmm. The entire thing is fear-mongering, which is the exact opposite of the platform that the Liberals ran on.
I mean, not to mention the fact that the difference between, I mean, when you're talking rifles, a restricted rifle and a non-restricted rifle, there's really no difference. Like,
no, and there's no difference really between a handgun and any other gun either. You know, I always ask people, like, why do handguns need to be more tightly regulated? And the response is invariably, oh, they're more concealable. If they're not saying, oh, it's because they're designed for killing, the answer is, oh, it's because they're more concealable. And I try and tell people, it's like, anything's concealable if you have an intent. You know, and people always argue against semi-automatic guns because they think, well, they're more suitable for killing. And I tell them, like, look, you know, that bolt-action rifle you're so staunchly defending while criticizing me for owning ARs, you know, your bolt-action rifle, you can cut that barrel down to next to nothing and that gun will still function as intended. You cut down a semi-automatic rifle's barrel length and it will fire probably one shot before malfunctioning.
Yep. Yeah. I have an SBR AR that it's taken work.
It doesn't even run right under optimum conditions.
You can make them run, but it takes a degree of finesse that it's not something you're going to hacksaw in your garage like a short barrel shotgun. It's just not going to happen.
Exactly.
Yeah. Moving on from C42 before I have an aneurysm, let's talk about C51 so I can get upset about that. Work to repeal the problematic element of Bill C51 and introduce new legislation that strengthens accountability with respect to national security and better balances collective security with rights and freedoms. I would love to know what the Liberal Party thinks is the problematic element of C51 because I find the entire thing repulsive.
Yeah.
The entire bill is a slippery slope argument waiting to lock people up.
Yep. You can use Bill C51 to lock everybody up on this podcast.
You can use it to lock up most of the country.
Yeah.
Simply by virtue of criticizing the government in any way, shape, or form. I don't think I get enough unemployment checks is enough under the bill that they could lock you up because you're trying to secede. Again, my mind is boggled at the wording and the policy.
It's bad law, and I think that without C51, the Conservatives probably would have been reelected.
I think you're probably right, and I think something that we need to point out is that C51 was endorsed by just as many Liberals as it was Conservatives.
That's true.
Yeah.
The only party that in lockstep did not vote for C51, and again, my mind is boggled, was the NDP. And why the NDP would not vote for C51, because it's completely counterintuitive to everything in their party platform, I do not know. But
probably thought it didn't go far enough.
You know, I know you're joking. Maybe you're right. I don't know. I'd like to believe. I would really like to believe that whoever the whip is in the NDP party, if it's the leader or somebody else, I would really like to believe that somebody in the NDP party realized that it was a giant slippery slope argument, and if the Conservatives won, all of the NDP would get locked up, and they weren't dumb enough to do it.
Maybe.
But the Liberals voted for C51 just as much as the Conservatives did, and the fact that they want to reduce problematic elements doesn't mean, I'm going to curse again, doesn't mean anything. It's poor law, it's bad language, it shouldn't even be in the ministerial mandate. They should just repeal the entire law because the entire law is stupid. I realize that sounds like a childish argument. I have my reasons for saying it's stupid.
It is. I mean, I dissected this law right before it came into force on my podcast, and I'm not going to rehash it all here, but there's nothing good in it. It's just lofty language, you know, that sounds good, and it capitalizes on people's fears, especially of Islamic terrorism, and people fail to see how dangerous it is. People fail to see, and they won't believe you. That's the thing. Is anytime you say, well, you know, this wording it doesn't necessarily mean, quote unquote, the enemy. It could be anybody. And then they say, oh, that'll never happen. Of course, okay, yeah, maybe you could conceivably interpret the wording that way, but obviously they didn't mean it that way. That will never happen. And you know, this is the attitude, and these are the arguments from people who were living in Germany in 1933. You know, they thought they lived in an enlightened society. They thought that horrible things could never happen. They thought that there would never be mass detention. They thought that there would never be politically motivated police. They thought that it would never happen, and that their society was above it. But then it happens, and the attitude that it can't happen is a requisite for evil shit happening.
Absolutely. The one positive point I could find in the public safety emergency preparedness mandate letter was, and I don't think it goes far enough, enhance compensation benefits for public safety officers who are permanently disabled or killed in the line of duty, including the creation of compensation benefit for firefighters, police officers, and paramedics. So, anyone that gets killed in their job already gets benefits. I think the people that sign up to do jobs to serve their community that have inherently dangerous jobs, firefighters, police officers, paramedics, are entitled to some additional benefits that isn't covered through your worker safety insurance board of your particular province. I think that's an entirely noble and reasonable thing to do, because these are people that want to go into harm's way for people who don't want to go into harm's way. I don't like that it leaves out the military. Why are we creating a second class of citizens?
Well, I'll tell you, I don't like the idea. Go ahead.
No, that's just anyone that goes and puts themselves in a spot where they could get shot at. Yeah, certainly deserves, you know, extra compensation should that tragic event ever actually happen. Like that's a no-brainer in my mind.
Here, let me throw this out there. Policing is not a dangerous job. It doesn't even make the top 10 when it comes to like death and injury rates.
You're right.
So let's just say, you know, a police officer gets hurt or killed in the line of duty. Why is there a special fund now being created to compensate them more so than somebody who, say, works in the oil industry and gets killed or injured? You know, is what they do for society less valuable?
And that's what I mean. Like, when I said on its face, it's a noble idea. This is what I mean. These people are, and I realize that policing, firefighting for that matter, paramedics, and actually the military, all don't make that top 10 job list because they're not dangerous jobs, because they've been set up in such a way to try and keep those people that are willing to do them for as long as possible. But at the same time, the altruistic part of me, I get the benefit that they're trying to produce society by saying if a cop gets shot doing his job, we want to make sure that his kids can go to school. I don't know that I like the way the government's going about doing it. But like I say, this is the only positive thing I can find in his entire mandate letter, and I had to give the guy something positive saying we're going to rip on him for a bunch.
Fair enough. The only thing, like, I just look at that and I look at it kind of as a matter of principle. What I feel like is created here is it puts police officers in particular, it puts servants of the state kind of on a pedestal.
Absolutely, it does.
And that makes me very apprehensive.
It does. I mean, is one life worth more than another? And I mean,
Exactly.
We're all going to say no.
That's what I'm getting at.
Unfortunately, the reality of the situation is, and look at an insurance provider, one life is quantifiably worth more than another. There are people that do that for a job, and I have to deal with the reality of that situation. And people that are willing to sign on the dotted line, even though I don't agree with what the state's doing, the people that are willing to sign on the dotted line with the good intentions to go out and keep their community safe, to provide medical care to people who need it in an emergency, to put out fires in burning buildings, to go overseas or to protect their country and their, like, the national defense of their own country. Those people are a rarity. And I think that they need to be acknowledged in some way. I don't like the way the government's going about doing it, but at least they're...
Then I would say most of those jobs are not exactly financially lucrative either.
No, they're not. And that's...
When you look at somebody, say, working in the oil fields, sure, there's a high risk that something really bad is going to happen there, but those guys make tons of money that hopefully they're not just pissing away on booze and putting away in the bank.
Now, I don't know about municipal officers, but OPP officers are very well compensated.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's a misconception thing. Maybe it's a public perception thing about how much these jobs pay.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I've never looked at being a police officer, but I did the military thing, and I know how much our soldiers get paid, and it's not nearly enough for the crap that most of them do most of the time.
Soldiers get paid a slave wage, essentially, because their compensation is given to them while factoring in they basically have free room and board for most of the time.
That's not even true in the Canadian
and
forces.
It's bullshit.
They have to pay for that crap.
Yeah, and it's bullshit because that's not the actual case, and it's not like the family just gets a free ticket too.
Yeah.
You know. But the only thing I wanted to say was on the subject of firemen. Firemen in my community get paid shit. However, there are many firemen from Hamilton that have their second homes in my community. So how do you figure that one out?
Nice. Let's move on to, I'm done with, one more thing with Goodall, and then we move on. And only because it's a recurring theme in a lot of mandate letters, and this time we're not talking about no touchy in the workplace. We're going to talk about marijuana. So I think the rule is puff, puff, pass. Is that how that works?
So I'm told.
Yeah, okay. So part of and this happened in, I don't know, I think I couldn't actually read all 30 portfolios because A, it's terribly dry, and B, it just annoyed me. But in half of the ones I read, 10 of the 20 or so, 8 of the 20, you were to support the Ministers of Justice and Health on efforts that will lead to legalization and regulation of marijuana. So I don't know what everybody's doing, but apparently we all have to support getting some weed.
So when everyone realizes that he's not qualified when there's an emergency, you can just hand out joints to everybody and they'll just chill out.
Yeah, and just everybody relax. Yeah, I don't know. This comes up I swear, I read 20 of these mandate letters, 22 of these mandate letters, and it came up in at least 8 of them. Everybody's supposed to support justice and health in legalizing and regulating marijuana. That's all I want to say about that with this guy.
Keep calm and pass the duchy on the left-hand side, I guess, something like that.
Calm past the left. Okay, we already touched on this fella. Let's talk about foreign affairs and Stéphane Dion. He hails from Saint Laurent, Montreal. Once upon a time, Mr. Dion was a poli-sci professor, and since 1996, he's been the MP for Saint Laurent. Under Chrétien, he was the Intergovernmental Affairs Minister, whatever he did. And under Martin, he was the Environment Minister. He was also the interim party leader for the Liberals from 2006 to 2008. So everybody knows about Dion. Pretty sure, I can guess everybody on the panel is going to say we don't generally care for this gentleman.
No, pass.
No, pass. Remember, puff, puff, pass, and it's to the left. All right, so his mandate letter, we'll go through this quickly because nobody really wants to talk about this guy, and I don't blame you. Work with the United States to make substantial progress on reducing impediments to trade and commerce between our countries, including providing border infrastructure and security, streamlining cargo inspection, and facilitating the movement of people. And again, on its face, that sounds like a wonderful idea. I think the CBSA already does this. That's sort of their role as the border guards.
For the low price of $9.95 for the service of levying taxes on your goods.
Yeah, I don't know what Dion's supposed to do. Like, go talk to the Americans and make it easier for them to come in and out of our country, and make sure we ship some stuff there if we manufacture anything ever.
I'll tell you, I have a Nexus pass, and I would be okay if they allowed my Nexus pass to extend to like my property, so stuff that I had purchased from the United States, and it just got a free pass through customs. That would be nice.
That would be sweet.
Yeah, but if I don't declare my crap when I go through the Nexus lane, I lose my Nexus card.
Well, declare it, but just get it shipped straight through without going through customs.
Exactly. You get like a pre-approval thing, even if it's just they don't bother opening shit up or anything like that. They just look at the list of contents and hopefully give you a pass, or maybe if they have to, put a token levy on it. But that's what I mean. Not that you just drive on through without declaring your stuff, but I mean like when you order something from Brownells, for example, and then it should just oh it's that guy, yeah, move it along.
Well, actually, can we total tangent? Last week, 2 weeks ago, I talked about my new shotgun, that Benelli I got, the 3.5-inch Supernova, but I had to get a mag extension for it, and nobody in Canada wants to sell a 6-shot mag extension for a Supernova, but I found somebody who was going to import a Nordic Component one sometime in 2016 for an unknown price and an unknown date.
Mm-hmm.
So I went ahead and I put through all of the stuff because Brownells had the mag extension was on sale, and then they had American Thanksgiving, so I got it for like a sweet deal. And I've been working with the woman in exports, Sandy Morinville at Brownells is fantastic to work with if you have to export anything. I've been putting the paperwork through, and I swear to God, every day for a week, she's given me a different form to fill out. Because I had to call somebody in Ottawa and get permission from the Canadian government, and then I had to fill out a form so that they could go to like the State Department. And I think I filled out like 6 of these damn forms.
Yep.
But if they could just ship me my shotgun extension, because it's really just a metal tube and a spring, that'd be great.
That's what you get for wanting to carry around a deadly assault shotgun. I mean,
it's not an assault shotgun. It doesn't have a forward grip or the shoulder thing that goes up.
Yeah. That's going to be your next import.
The shoulder thing that goes up?
No, to be honest, it's convoluted, obviously, and it's so convoluted that a lot of the people don't really know what's going on, especially the people on the Canadian side of things. The first time I ever took my guns to the United States, obviously you need your Form 6.
Right.
But before I had done that, I had sent an email to CBSA saying, is there anything I need from you guys to take them out of the country and then subsequently bring them back in? And they were just, it was something, I guess they had never been asked this question before, or whoever I had spoken to just didn't really know what was going on. I ended up getting forms to actually export the guns to the United States.
Nice.
And I filled them out and got them approved. And then when I went to the United States, and then I came back, and then I presented Canadian Customs with these forms, and the guy was just scratching his head. He didn't know what he was looking at. He'd never seen that form before. It took like an hour and a half at Customs to sort it out.
That's amazing. So,
yeah.
Conversely, can you talk about your Form 6 that you did in the States and how that process went?
Yeah, the Form 6 process is actually very simple. It's a 2-page form, and then you can attach any additional paperwork you need for additional firearms and ammunition. As long as your gun is legal in the United States, so that means nothing Chinese made, and I think for temporary importation, you're okay if it's a foreign-made semi-automatic rifle with a detachable box magazine. That's okay for temporary importation, but not for permanent importation. Otherwise, it would need a specific number of U.S.-made parts. Okay. But you're okay there. No short-barreled shotguns, no short-barreled rifles, and pretty much anything else that's a no-no there is also a no-no here. So those are pretty much the only mistakes you can make. Now, if you put those on your forms, they're not going to refuse your form. They're just going to send you back your form partially approved with the offending firearm scratched out. So if you feel like you can slip one through the cracks, then go for it. Maybe you will. But you just fill out this form, and then you can fax it. I prefer to scan mine and email it to a contact I have with the Department of Justice, and or you can snail mail it, and then it's free. There's no charge, and then they send the form back to you either through the fax or they'll mail it back to you, and it's your form that they send back to you. And what I really like about this system is it eliminates the possibility of a transcribing error. They send you back your form, so if there's a mistake on it, it's your fault. And so if you're at the border arguing with a customs officer about one digit in the serial number being off, it's your fault, not theirs.
Isn't that a far superior system to the CBSA? We don't really know or care to comprehend what's going on around us.
Well, you know what?
The ATF has a simple system. You fill out the form, you put in your number of ammunition, you put in the serial number, you just fax it over, and you get it back approved.
Oh, that's another thing. Steel cord pistol ammo. Do not bring that to the United States. You will go to jail. Best case scenario, they will seize the ammunition and send you back to Canada. one time, might as well tell the story. One time, I was going to the United States. I had 4 handguns, 2 ARs, and this was actually right after this was about a month after the Boston bombing, and so I declare my guns, and then the guy says, "Okay, you got to go to secondary inspection. We'll check out your serial numbers." And so I'm sitting in the post-secondary building for like an hour and a half. It's taken forever, and then the officer comes in. And he says, you're Tyler? And I said, yeah. He said, okay, stay right there. And then he just disappears. I'm like, oh, fuck. And so I'm thinking, what could possibly be causing the holdup? And then I remembered one of my pistols was the Tokarev, and I brought like 400 rounds of Tokarev ammo. And in Canada, the ammo we get is steel core surplus. And in the United States, that is very illegal, and I'm just like, shit. They put a magnet to the bullets. I'm fucked. I'm gonna lose everything or go to jail. Fortunately, the problem was that they couldn't locate a serial number on my SIG 226. So the guy comes in and he's like, "You come here," and I'm still like, I don't know what's going on yet. And he says 2 things. Number 1, the serial number on your SIG 226 is impossible to find. Next time, tell us like where it is so we know to like shine a light on it and, hold it up in just the right way so we can read it. And then the other thing is, in New York State, you may not have charged pistol mags, regardless of whether they are in a case with the pistol or not. You can only have charged pistol mags if you have a New York carry permit. So he said that is the information I am giving you. It's yours to do with as you wish. And get out of here. So that delay at the border, that cost me an hour and a half on like an 8-hour journey. So I'm speeding all the way through the back roads of New York trying to make it to Virginia on time. And then sure enough, police officer, his lights go on, pulls me over for speeding. And so I pull over and he says, you know why I pulled you over? I said, yeah, I was speeding. He said, do you know how fast you were going? I said, no. He said, you're doing 63. It's a 45. And I said, I'm sorry. I got held up at the border because I got a bunch of guns in the car. Oh, yeah, I'm not sure if I'm supposed to tell you or not, but I got a bunch of guns in the car. So that's that. And the guy just looks at me like dumbfounded. And he's like, oh, what kind of guns you got? And he was like right into it. And then he just handed me all my stuff back. He says, get out of here, slow down. But he's a pretty cool guy. So I don't know. I have both positive and negative experiences with law enforcement when it comes to guns, especially as a foreigner. And coming back into Canada, same thing. It's hit and miss. One time I get this guy from Quebec, and he's like a sport shooter too, and he's like, "Oh man, I just got a SIG 226. I'm really loving it. I'm really tightening my groups up." And he was like, "Have a nice day. Get out of here." I'd say on average, on the Canadian side, they send me to post-secondary to actually inspect the guns, and I almost invariably travel with restricteds 2 out of 5 times. And on the U.S. side, it's 2 out of 5 to 3 out of 5 times. And it's very straightforward. You simply, with your filled out and approved form going into the United States, you declare it, and sometimes they'll check them, sometimes they won't. The Boston bombing, about 2 days after the Boston bombing, I crossed in the United States. There were 3 guys per booth. They had the bomb-sniffing dogs. They had the guy walking around the car with a mirror and stuff. And I just tell the guy, hey, I've got guns, and I hand him my paperwork. And then, so there's an exchange taking place, and then the guy who's behind my vehicle with the mirror, he's like, what's going on over there? And the guy who I'm talking to, he says he's got guns in the car. And then the guy over by my trunk, he's like, does he have his paperwork? And the guy I'm speaking to, he just holds the papers up, and the guy's just like, he's good, let him go. Didn't ask to see anything, and just sent me on my way.
Yeah.
So, but it's straightforward and it's free. Coming into Canada as an American, it's $25. And it's a form that you fill out, and it's like signed and verified at customs. So it's not something that you get approved in advance.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Well, I have a friend that does historic reenactment, and he uses flintlock muskets. And he goes down to a bunch of events in the States, and he's kind of had some funny situations. Like, they'll ask him, like, oh, do you have, any weapons in the car or whatever, and he's like, oh, no. And then I guess they keep asking, and he's like, what are you going down for? He's like, oh, historic reenactment. They're like, oh, can we take a look in the car? They pop his trunk, and sure enough, he's got 2 muskets back there. Then all of a sudden, all hell breaks loose. And then, I guess all these guards come running, and then one guy goes, is he part of a reenactment group? And they're like, yeah. They're like, let him go. Like, they don't think of those as weapons or guns because they're not bringing ammo or anything. Like, it's a prop. You don't even need a license for that thing in Canada. Yeah. Just go, let him through. So
it's not
it was all panic,
and
then all of a sudden everything's cool again. So
yeah, a similar thing. I've come back into Canada with obviously like legit guns, handguns, and you name it. Yeah. And we got one guy. I'm sent to post-secondary, and I've got one guy like slowly, leisurely making his way out towards my vehicle, and then all of a sudden he's about halfway between the building and my vehicle. This other guy comes running out of the building, and he's just like making a beeline for my car, and then he's just like, wait, I want to see, I want to check him out. And then so we must have spent 25 minutes just talking about guns, and he was telling me about the new Daniel Defense carbine he just bought, and a lot of the guys, they're good guys. A lot of them are weird.
Well, I think that's the same everywhere. 95% of people are good people.
Mm-hmm.
Let's look at it a little bit more, Dion, because I have something for making everybody sad. Part of his ministerial mandate letter is actually going to be acceding to the arms trade treaty. So this is the UN treaty with the serial number marking scheme for country of import and origin, and a second number to identify it in addition to the serial number. And basically this sounds like it's just from the Department of Making Me Sad.
This is basically going to create another gun registry, but the Liberals will be able to wash their hands of it, essentially.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't want to go into detail on the UNATT, but acceding to this is a terrible, terrible thing for not just Canadians, but everyone who produces, imports, or exports firearms.
Well, if it's already got a number to identify it by, why do we need 2 numbers to identify it? Like, it just seems
because
stupid.
The first number doesn't go in the UN database. That's it. The entire thing is a...
Well, yeah, but wouldn't it be easier for them to just do that? Like, I mean, if they are going to push forward this stupidity, just do that, rather than screwing everything up and making us engrave 2 numbers and now I can't import this one because it doesn't have 2 numbers and all that nonsense. Like, there's already a billion guns out there that they're not going to be in their database. So, okay.
Yeah, I know. The whole thing is literally, it's just the Department of Making Me Sad. It does nothing for public safety. It does nothing to stop illicit arms trade. It does nothing to stop warlords in Africa from getting AK-47s from former COMBLOC states.
But it's not about that. It's never been about that.
It's not about that.
About
That's
control.
what they frame it as. It's about control. It is. And and even if a country like Russia or China signs the treaty and follows the rule and puts RU or CN and the number and the country that they're shipping the gun to, it doesn't do anything to stop the gun being transferred to an intermediate somewhere along the way or after the fact. The whole thing, it's the UN meddling in sovereign politics, and we should avoid the entire thing.
Yeah.
Okay, other things that make me sad about Stéphane Dion. Working with the Minister of National Defense to increase support for United Nations peace operations, its mediation, conflict prevention, and post-conflict reconstruction. In case it was unclear about how I feel about the UN from the Arms Trade Treaty, I don't like the UN. I don't want us doing their policing for them.
Yeah, I mean, like, what more can be added to that? I don't like the idea of basically handing over our people for whatever their bidding is, essentially.
Our soldiers have signed up to defend our country. They're doing their job. They should be protecting the sovereignty of Canada. They should not be in Kosovo making sure that 2 people that have been in civil war for 100 years don't shoot at one another. And they shouldn't have to rebuild a school for the 3rd time because one of them decided to blow it up again. The whole thing is a scam for countries that have been successful at capitalism and manufacturing to pay for countries who have not been successful at other forms of government and policing genocidal dictators that keep trying to go into civil war against another group because of the way they look or the way they talk or the faith that they practice. I want nothing to do with the UN, and we shouldn't be providing a peacekeeping force. That is not the role of our military. I realize that's what the military was under Chrétien and Martin. I realize that's what it was under Trudeau Sr. when he significantly reduced funding and hurt the forces. I am very happy that under Harper we were not the UN police dog that they sent to go and deal with people that the UN wanted dealt with. I don't think that that should be our role.
I mean, I don't necessarily disagree. I mean, I think sometimes people do need to step in, but if we're going to do it at their bidding, then we should be compensated for it. You know, if they're going to want us to fill a role, we should be paid to fill that role.
I don't disagree. I don't think it's the place of our military to be doing that. That's not what our soldiers are signing up for.
No, it's not. I mean, sometimes I think people do need to step in to do some of that because some of those countries are just fucked. But yeah, if we're going to just arbitrarily get sent somewhere by somebody that's not the Canadian, get some sort of compensation from that. Let me
throw this idea out there. The UN is very well funded by its member states. Let the UN form its own peacekeeping force, and people who want to participate in those kinds of missions can volunteer to join the UN peacekeeping force.
Yep, that's a perfect solution to that problem. We shouldn't be providing them with boots on the ground. They should be able to find their own.
Yeah, people who join the Canadian forces, I could be wrong, but if I joined the Canadian forces, it would be to serve Canada, not to serve some international parliament that is accountable to no one.
Yeah,
no, that is an excellent solution. Yeah.
All right. I guess we'll stop kicking Stéphane Dion since he's not here to defend himself. We'll talk about somebody that I actually have some respect for, Marc Garneau, who's been appointed the Transport Minister, and he is the MP for Notre Dame de Grace Westmount in Quebec. So this is a Montreal suburb. Marc Garneau is a former astronaut and the first Canadian out of outer space. He's also the former president of the Canadian Space Agency, served as president of CSA from 2001 through 2006. Leaving the Canadian Space Agency in 2006, he ran for the Liberal Party and lost, and then won when he ran in Ville-Marie in 2008. He was also in the leadership running for the Liberal government in 2013 and stopped to support Mr. Trudeau. That's Trudeau Jr. So, I don't know. This guy's a cool Canadian. Guy was an astronaut. I don't think he's a career politician. I think he's definitely done some politicking. I mean, he was the head of an agency, a government agency, the Canadian Space Agency, for 5 years.
Apparently, after 15 years in the Navy, he retired as a captain. So, I mean, that's what he did for at least 15 years of his life.
Yeah, no, he was a Navy captain. He went to NASA. He trained to be an astronaut. After being an astronaut, he was involved in the Canadian Space Agency. He eventually ended up being the president of that. He's been involved in politics for the last, call it, 12 years. He's been there since 2006 with the Liberal Party. Dude seems like a cool Canadian. I don't understand why he's the transport minister. The Minister of Science.
Well, maybe we're going to be
putting people in space
and having some sort of space shuttles for the average citizen to get to work on the moon or something, in which case then he's a perfect candidate.
Like, I don't know what his political qualifications are, but his professional qualifications as a naval officer, a scientist, and an astronaut, I mean, the guy's a good guy. I just don't understand the appointment to transport minister, but I don't understand a lot of the appointments to cabinet, and maybe that's for the best.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think this guy would be a much better candidate for the Veterans Affairs guy who has no military service whatsoever.
Yeah, Veterans Affairs, Sciences, there's a lot of better cabinet-level positions that I could see Mr. Garneau in. I mean, I guess somebody's got to be the transportation minister at the end of the day, and maybe he's just the most qualified because maybe he really, really likes railway safety. Like, I just don't see it. Like, I don't see it. So some of his mandates are reinforce railway safety, which actually sounds like a do-nothing kind of a job. Like, make sure they follow the rules we've already given them, Jimmy. Like,
yeah, our rail's been working all right for a number of years. I don't know. We need to
reinforce the railway safety. Okay, everybody, keep doing what you're doing. Mark Garneau said so.
Yeah, that's largely a reaction to the that oil train that burned up in that Quebec town 3 years ago now.
Do you think that's what that is? They had one accident recently, and that's their.
It's just political fodder to satisfy the people that wanted something done about that.
Okay, so his next mandate, or out of the list that I picked, because I didn't want to do his whole list, because these people all have very long lists that don't actually tell you much. Improve marine safety, and this is another one of those ones that I'm not really sure what anyone, never mind Mark Garneau, is supposed to do about it, because it's marine safety. There are rules for that.
Got some qualifications there, right? Being in the Navy for 15 years, I imagine he knows something about boats and marine safety.
I realize that, but we already have maritime law, we already have maritime safety rules, we already have international conventions on those topics. I don't know what's he going to do to improve them. Hey, everybody, make sure you're wearing your life vest. Mark Garneau says so.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Like, I'm an astronaut and I approve this message. I don't know what he's going to do.
That would actually be excellent if that's what he does.
You know what? If he did PSAs, I'd be cool with that.
I would prefer it if those PSAs took the form of him like canoeing around waterways in a canoe that was painted to look like a little battleship.
Nice. And hanging out
a little turret on the front.
Soda.
Again, I totally support that. So a couple of things that he's been tasked with that I don't think are fantastic ideas. Reviewing the previous government changes to the Fisheries Act and Navigable Water Protection Act, restoring loss protection and incorporating modern safeguards. And another point, formalizing a moratorium on crude oil tanker traffic on British Columbia's north coast. And I'm lumping these together because I think it all falls under the Navigable Waters Act, or what was the Navigable Waters Act. So the Harper government got significantly reduced the number of protected waterways under the Fisheries Acts and Navigable Water Acts because they already have laws to deal with how you put stuff in the water in this country. And it was redundant to have another set of laws to tell people how to do that. And I want to make a joke about Montreal and dumping 8 million gallons of raw sewage into the St. Lawrence, but I'm going to try and restrain myself. I don't see what they want him to draft another set of laws to reinforce a set of existing laws. Like,
you see, the left jumped all over this, thinking that Harper just made it a free-for-all to just dump your trash in all these waterways. But like you said, the waterways were already protected provincially by the laws on the provincial books. You didn't need redundant federal laws to do it. And so by eliminating those protections, he basically freed up or eliminated the need for certain federal government resources to be devoted to that. And people didn't appreciate what was done there. They didn't appreciate, one of the things Harper campaigned on successfully was, ending the rot in Ottawa and basically cutting down the size of government. And then here he goes ahead and does something that is significant, and the public completely misinterprets it. And, due in no small part to the media intentionally pushing like an erroneous narrative, and certain political parties pushing it too. But and now here we are.
The erroneous narrative, the manipulation of language, because the Harper government repealed the Navigable Waters Protection Act. And on its face, it sounds like a bad thing until you read what's in the Navigable Waters Protection Act and what's already in statute in the provincial systems. There's already provincial laws that says you can't dump waste into a waterway unless you're Montreal and you get a special exemption.
Yeah, but that requires people to read and know stuff, though, right?
I know, and that's part of what I want to do is have an informed electorate, and I hope that this is a way that we can bring some of that information out to Canadians at large. On its face, destroying the Navigable Water Protections Act sounds like a bad thing until you understand that Navigable Water Protections Act is just redundant law on top of existing provincial law. Because I don't remember what the meme was going around Facebook a year ago when this happened, but Canada went from 130,000 protected streams to 10 or whatever the number was.
Yeah.
It doesn't. They're all still protected by a different level of government. And at the same time, they want to talk about not shipping crude oil through northern British Columbia because it might have an oil spill.
Well, if you're not going to build the pipelines, how are we going to get it out?
Trains. Trains have worked out really well for us. We should do more. No, wait, those keep falling off the rails. And
I don't know, but we've got somebody looking out to improve the safety of the rails.
No. They're reinforcing. They're not improving.
Same difference. I mean...
Same difference. Yeah, I don't know. I don't understand the transport minister position at all. Maybe that's for the best. Maybe I'm just not informed enough to understand what this guy's job is. I don't understand why Mr. Garneau's tasked with transport minister. I think there are better jobs that he would be more suited for. I don't understand anything in the mandate letter that they gave him.
Yeah, he's definitely one of those people that seems like a cool addition to the cabinet, but they're like, man, you know what would be really cool is if we made this astronaut part of the cabinet. Where are we going to put him, though?
You know who hasn't got press lately? The Canadian Space Agency. Let's get those guys back in the news.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Space transportation. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's going places, like the moon.
Oh, dear. All right. I don't think we'll go too much longer because we're pretty much past our 90 minutes. Did you guys want to talk about any of these other people that I have listed?
No, maybe we should just post the show notes that you typed up here for people to review.
Yeah, okay, let's do that. So other ministers that I thought would be cool for us to talk about: Canadian heritage, immigration, refugee, and citizenship, health, who, by the way, is an actual physician, which is kind of cool. Somebody that's in charge of something that knows what they're talking about. What a wild concept.
Yeah, but isn't she a Mennonite or something like that?
She does belong to a Mennonite church, which I would really like to talk about because I don't... There's some stuff there that doesn't make sense in my head.
Yeah, the whole health and science and being for vaccinating and being a Mennonite, just in my mind, maybe I'm completely mistaken and ignorant of a lot of this, doesn't seem to go.
Yeah, there's some stuff there that doesn't make a ton of sense. Also, the last position that I want to talk about was the status of women. Minister for the status of women. I don't even really understand what the title is. Wish her a lot of luck too, because her entire job sounds completely counterintuitive. And anyway, we'll move into rapid fire if we don't have anything else to say about any of that. And yeah, I'll post this all in the show notes so that people can read my highlighted versions. And this is only 9 of the 30 people that have been appointed to cabinet. All right, rapid fire, email feedback. We don't have any feedback this week. If you want to email the show, you can do that by sending an email to feedback@CanadianPatriotPodcast.com. Live listener feedback on YouTube, we have 2 messages. First off, we're going to go back to Swampland Films, who's commented before. I'm a bit behind here, but I'd rather our pilots fly MiG-21s than F-35s. I don't think we're buying Russian jets, but MiG-21s are technically more suited to high Arctic operations than the F-35 is. So,
yeah, I definitely trust anything the Russians put together for cold weather performance.
Yeah, I mean that's their thing, right? They have as much snow as we do, maybe more.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Then we could reenact that scene from Top Gun.
I don't know. We were a meter and a half away. Here, I've got a Polaroid. Yeah. All right, and we've got a comment from David. Remember, quotes, ad scam. You don't need to work to get paid by the Liberal government as long as you're friends. So that's probably in reference to our fellow that's making $1,800 a day to greet refugees that are being resettled.
To be fair, though, I don't think that's exclusive to the Liberal Party.
No, I mean, cronyism is cronyism. If any party does it, I'm going to call them on it. The Liberals just happen to be the ones that's visible right now.
Yeah.
I don't have any Facebook feedback. I don't have any Stitcher feedback. I don't even know if you can leave feedback on Stitcher, to be 100% honest with you. iTunes is still in the works. I don't know. I've probably upset the apple gods. I might need to sacrifice the appropriate number of farm animals in the correct sequence to get that to happen. We'll do the widget of the week next. So free plug for Spatha Tactical. Sean's not here today, so I'm actually going to talk about his product. Yeah, so Tyler's got his hat.
Here, I'm leaning up against the camera.
I've got my cool guy hat. But I actually also have a Gladius muzzle brake in its fancy Apple-esque box. I thought maybe I got sent a really small iPhone because it is a really nice package. So I've got a $130 muzzle brake for my new VZ58 because my commie gun kind of shoots funny after shooting ARs with massive comps on it for a couple of years. Installation super easy. Spin it. It goes on, it ratchets in place. Sean's got another brake that's, I'm going to say universal. I don't think that's really the right word. It's marketed as a threadless muzzle brake, so it's got a collet adapter that it can go on to a wide variety of firearms that have a traditional target crown and are not threaded, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, he's got different models for different barrel profiles.
Yeah,
so you'd have to buy the one for your barrel outside the diameter.
Sounds really cool. Not appropriate for any of my guns. I did pick up the Gladius, which is a different model. I think the other one's the Badassari.
Bestiarii.
Bestiarii?
Mm-hmm.
Sure. So that's the threadless one, has a collet system, goes on different unthreaded muzzles. The Gladius goes on threaded muzzles, comes in a number of different threads. I picked up the one that's, I think it's 1 in 14 right-handed, but don't quote me on that. It's the one that fits on the VZ58. They have other sizes and thread.
Yes,
pitches.
that is correct.
Oh, that's correct. Okay. So
It's got the D10.
yeah, it's got the D10. Yeah. So I spun it on and spun it back off, and it seemed to fit okay. So I'll take it out and shoot it, and I'll get a full write-up of this done for Everyday Tactical at some point in the future. Seemed pretty cool. $130, and Sean's actually running a sale for Christmas. Use coupon code XMIS. That's X-ray. I forgot the letter for M. I'm terrible at this. X-ray Mike Alpha Sierra. Sorry, it took me a second. I've been drinking. Use the code XMIS, gets you 50% off. I don't know how long the coupon code is good for. 50% off a muzzle brake is a good deal no matter how much the muzzle brake costs. I haven't found anything similar for this VZ58 short of getting something from Zahal, the Israeli company that makes aftermarket parts. And, I mean, you're still looking... The cheap one, I think, was $100. The expensive one was like $250.
Yeah.
Yeah, those brakes that Sean's selling on his site are made in Quebec, too.
Oh, great. Well, I knew they were made in Canada. I didn't
Yeah,
realize they were made...
I actually got one not too long ago.
And how do you like it, Gavin? Does it work well?
I love it. The only downside is you're not going to shoot fireballs anymore.
I'm okay with that.
It really does reduce the kick. I wish I had heard about the sale because I would have waited a month to get it. But...
Yeah, so I've got one. I'm going to do a review on it. Sean's not paying for advertising. I'm not getting a free muzzle brake. I'm not even getting a free hat. I'm just doing that because Sean is a Canadian business with a cool product that I think everybody should get a chance to get on the sale. 50% off. Visit spathatactical.com. Use coupon code X-ray Mike Alpha Sierra. That's Xmas, and tell them that you were sent by the Canadian Patriot podcast. Sean will know who that is. All right. Does anyone have anything else before we close out this evening's show?
No, it's a good show. Thanks for having me back.
No, as always, Tyler, I'm happy to have you on. Gavin, thank you for joining the panel. I hope you'll consider becoming a regular.
Sure.
Tyler, the best place for people to stay in touch with you, is that still through Facebook?
Yeah, Facebook's probably best. You can find me on Facebook, Tyler Gerard, or you can contact me through my podcast page, facebook.com/LibertyDeathPodcast, or on Twitter and Instagram @LibertyPodcast.
Gavin, do you have a public-facing persona?
Not really. I mean, anyone, I guess, that wants to check out me and cool gun photos, you can always follow me on Instagram at urbex_GTA if you're on that. Do a lot of photography stuff and shoot guns and post all the photos I can.
Right on. And I'm, of course, as I am every week, even though I've been questioned on this, I am Andrew. And you can see my work and reviews on everydaytacticool.com or follow me on Instagram or Twitter at edtacticool. You can visit the show at CanadianPatriotPodcast.com or like us on Facebook, Facebook.com/Canadian Patriot Podcast. I would really appreciate it if people could go ahead and click like on that so we could get a bigger audience. Again, the show has recently become available on Stitcher for your on-demand radio needs. And we'd like to hear your feedback. If you'd like to visit CanadianPatriotPodcast.com/feedback and fill out the form, or email the show at feedback@CanadianPatriotPodcast and let us know what you think. And this is the part in the show where I'd like to remind our listeners, you are the true North, strong and free.